2023 Liber 29 Eddie Lima 29 Echo. Yeah. Okay, so we are picking up from page 12. It says a simple logic problem. And of course, if you want to do 9, 10, and 11 with us, that'll be just earlier in the Rove playlist. Okay. If anything lies at the core of rationality, it must surely be logic. The prototype of a rational inference is the syllogism, if P then Q. P, therefore, Q. Consider a simple example. Suppose the coinage of a country has a portrait of one of its eminent sovereigns on one side and a specimen of its magnificent fauna on the other. Now consider a simple if-then rule. If a coin has a king on one side, then it has a bird on the other. Here are 4 coins displaying a king, a queen, a moose, and a duck. Which of the coins do you have to turn over to determine whether the rule has been violated? If you're like most people, you said the king, or the king and the duck. The correct answer is the king and the moose. Why? Everyone agrees you have to turn over the king, because if you failed to find a bird on the reverse, it would violate the rule in so many words. Most people know there's no point in turning over the queen, because the rule says, if king, then bird. It says nothing about coins with a queen. Many say you should turn over the duck, but when you think about it, that coin is irrelevant. The rule is if king, then bird, not if bird, then king. If the duck shared the coin with the queen, nothing would be amiss. But now consider the moose. If you turned that coin over and found the king on the obverse, the rule if king, then bird would have been transgressed. The answer, then, is the king and the moose. On average, only 10% of people make those picks. I didn't. I was just like the king, yeah. The Wasson selection task, named after its creator, the cognitive psychologist Peter Wasson, has been administered with various if P then Q rules for 65 years. Time and again, people turn over the P, or the P and the Q, and fail to turn over the not Q. It's not that they're incapable of understanding the right answer. As with the cognitive reflection test, as soon as it is explained to them, they slap themselves on the forehead and accept it. Don't slap yourselves. Really no need. There are lots of different mechanisms in there. But their unreflective intuition, one of the mechanisms, left to its own devices, without the other mechanisms, fails to do the logic. Okay, so the one mechanism by itself, that's not its job to deal with everything. Okay, you've got a mechanism in there, an unreflective intuition. So you got a mechanism that you got an it that could be categorized. Neil, it's Fred. You got an it that could be characterized as as the unreflective intuition, as part of that. And yeah, great. So great. Okay. And then, of course, some other mechanisms would have to kick in to maybe as quickly get the right answer. But you don't need to get the right answer that quickly. Anyway, let's move on. What does this tell us about human rationality? A common explanation is that it reveals our confirmation bias, the bad habit of seeking evidence that ratifies a belief and being incurious about evidence that might falsify it. People think that dreams are omens because they recall the time when they dreamt a relative had a mishap and she did, but they forget about all the times when a relative was fine after they dreamt she had a mishap. Or they think immigrants commit a lot of crime because they read in the news about an immigrant who robbed a store, but don't think about the larger number of stores robbed by native-born citizens. Confirmation bias is a common diagnosis for human folly and a target for enhancing rationality. Francis Bacon, often credited with developing the scientific method, wrote of a man who was taken to a church and shown a painting of sailors who had escaped a shipwreck thanks to their holy vows. "Aye," he remarked, "but where are they painted that were drowned after their vows?" Let's see that again. "Aye," he remarked, "but where are they painted that were drowned after?" So you got these paintings. All right, the emphasis has to go on drowned. Got it. Okay. Aye, he remarked, but where are they painted that were drowned after their vows? He observed, such is the way of all superstitions, whether in astrology, dreams, omens, divine judgments, or the like, wherein men, having a delight in such vanities, mark the event where they are fulfilled, but where they fail, although this happened much oftener, neglect and pass them by. Echoing a famous argument by the philosopher Karl Popper, most scientists today insist that the dividing line between science and pseudoscience is whether advocates of a hypothesis deliberately search for evidence that could falsify it and accept the hypothesis only if it survives. And that's awesome, because sometimes you'll be talking to people who believe in all kinds of stuff. Um, Aliens, flat Earth. I mean, aliens having put us here, flat Earth, and stuff like that. And they'll start to mention like things that sound like facts, and it's like, look, I'm gonna just listen, but if you want me to participate, I would need to know that if that like that we're looking for evidence to see whether it's wrong, and we're scrutinizing all this stuff that you're saying to me right now, because all my shit, let's scrutinize. I mean, at some point, obviously, we don't have all the time in the world, so at some point, I should be able to prove myself so that, anyway, let's move on. No, I take it back about proving us. I mean, we should always be scrutinized, but just not always. Forever, but not always. How about that? Forever, but not all the time. Just because limited resources. Anyhow, because we don't want to read too much anyway. We don't want this to get overwhelming. We're having fun, relax, we're learning. Because that last paragraph was kind of intense. So what are we at? We're almost at 8 minutes. I know there's some stuff I got to cut out. So what we can probably do is we'll end on the stamp question. Okay. How can humans make it through the day with an inability to apply the most elementary rule of logic? Part of the answer is that the selection task is a peculiar challenge. It doesn't ask people to apply the syllogism to make a useful deduction. Here's a coin with a king, what's on the other side? Or to test the rule in general. Is the rule true of the country's coinage? It asks whether the rule applies specifically to each of a handful of items before them on the table. The other part of the answer is that people do apply logic when the rule involves the shoulds and shouldn'ts of human life rather than arbitrary symbols and tokens. I put a big exclamation point. I say, what do you mean they all of a sudden, when it counts, they apply logic? Not at all what he said. I'm seeing that now. Suppose the post office sells 50-cent stamps for third-class mail but requires $10 stamps for express mail. That is, properly addressed mail must follow the rule. If a letter is labeled express mail, it must have a $10 stamp. Suppose the label and the stamp don't fit on the same side of the envelope, so a postal worker has to turn envelopes over to see if the sender has followed the rule. Here are 4 envelopes. Imagine that you are a postal worker. Which ones do you turn over? See you next time.